Welcome to the Dragon's Den. I am your venerable host Orochi, and today we are going to be talking about the Pathfinder 2 playtest of the Kineticist and its powers. The first ones up are air powers, which at level 1 you get aerial boomerang. For 2 actions, you send out a line of damage, and then it stops at 60 feet. And then on your next turn, it takes the direct path back to where you currently are. So you can sort of arc this a bit in interesting ways. But it's 2 actions for 2d4 slashing damage, which is pretty terrible. And it goes up by 1d4 every 2 levels. So it's basically 1d4 every spellcaster level. So that's keeping up with cantrips, basically. And there is sort of the possibility of hitting multiple targets with this, but lines are very tricky in Pathfinder because especially diagonal lines are extremely difficult to connect to different targets if you follow the rules as written. So this is probably one of the better damaging abilities that Kineticists get, but it can also still be kind of wonky and difficult to use. And as always, it can hit friendlies, so just getting the opportunity to line things up and being able to spend 2 actions to do it is difficult because you have to gather air first and then 2 actions to shoot the boomerang. So depending upon circumstances, this could almost never be useful to you. But that's pretty much the Kineticist in a nutshell. Is you really need to have your action economy game thought out. Air cushion is basically featherfall within 60 feet. And at 8th level, it goes up to 120 feet. And there's no number of how many air cushions you can make. And it only lasts a minute. Which is, it slows your descent to 60 feet around, which is still pretty devastating. That's still damage, you taking damage, especially for first level. A 60-foot drop, I don't remember the rules for falling. I think you take half as many feet, so that's 30 damage, I think. Which will fucking... that has the potential to kill a first level person. If you only have 15 health, that could outright still kill you. So, at first level, this is not such a fantastic ability, but like, it's almost at will featherfall that scales up to any number of creatures. But they have to be within 60 feet, which is also kind of... you know, if you're already falling, like the second you start falling, you fall 500 feet in Pathfinder. So, you know, it can be difficult to align that sort of stuff. Fair winds. Winds swirl around you and provide a tailwind to speed you and your allies, and a headwind to harry your foes. This is an aura. It's a pretty decent aura. Not at first level. It's pretty terrible at first level. At least half of it. You gain a 5-foot status bonus to your land speed. Any of your allies that start their turn in your aura gain a 10-foot status bonus to their speed until the end of their turn. And these bonus also apply to fly. And it makes it difficult terrain to your enemies. So, at first level, kinetic auras are 10 feet around you. So 10 feet of difficult terrain around you for enemies is of medium use. It could still be decent, but not a lot. Like, if your party is decent at pushing, then it makes it so that things can't step around you at all. They have to actually do full moves. So having this coupled with some good attacks of opportunity and shoving stuff could be great. But once you get the 8th level feat that expands your aura up to... It starts off at 20, and then, I forget, it scales up at like level 13 or 15 to make it so you can do 30-foot aura. Like a 30-foot aura around you of speed buff and difficult terrain for your enemies is crazy. That's super good. Like, there's so much stuff you could do with that. You could make an entire party of high-level characters that are just all about hit-and-run tactics, and the enemies will have an incredibly hard time getting to you. Especially if you, like, cast slow on a bunch of them. There's like, oh, they waste their entire turn getting to you. It is kind of unfortunate that the bonus speed for you is only 5 foot, because the 10 foot is the same as Long Strider, which everyone should find a way to get. But whatever, I guess. It's still stupid good as an aura. Whisper on the Wind. This is the message spell. And 8th level, you can do it out to a mile. So you can cast message at will. Like, that's rarely, if ever... This is a ribbon ability. It's never going to be powerful in any way, shape, or form. Like, this is the sort of ability that somebody was like, oh, hey, I'm playing in an espionage campaign right now, and wouldn't it be awesome to be able to just secretly, update my team members on what's going on constantly? It's like, sure, in that super ultra rare 1 out of every 200,000 players games that are going on can be useful, but in general, not really useful at all. It's cool, but it's not great. Like, I think that page space could have been used for a much better ability. Then on to level 4. It's interesting to note that there are no level 2 elemental feats. Just a thing to note. Couldn't tell you why. Just a thing. Because that means, you're either going to be using your 2nd level feat to buy a 1st level class feat or an additional 1st level elemental feat. So it's kind of weird. It's sort of like telling you, hey, pick up some of your class stuff or get something you might have missed. Because if there was 2nd level elemental feats, then the Universal might actually have reason to say, hey, I'm falling way the hell behind on stuff, but you have room to get more, so you don't really. Anyhow, flinging updraft. A speeding headwind heeds your call, picking someone up and depositing them nearby. Choose a creature within 60 feet of you. The target jumps up to 30 feet in any direction. If it doesn't land in a space of solid ground within 30 feet of where it started, it falls, but it doesn't take any damage from the fall. You choose the distance and direction of the jump. An unwilling target avoids being flung if it succeeds a reflex against your save class DC. This is super weird. You can either spend 2 actions to give a friendly target a single move action as a jump, which could actually be useful because if they don't have quick jump, a jump for them would be 2 actions anyhow, and they would have to run jump. So that could be useful. And then it scales up to 60 foot at 10th level, which, would require an athletics check for most people anyhow to get that. So that's useful, but not like, oh wow, that's awesome. It's useful, but doesn't wow me. The fact that you can choose the direction and cast it on an enemy, so you can literally just fling an enemy 60 feet in a direction, that's like, that is fucking bonkers. Like, that is absolute fucking bonkers. I can't, that can't reach play. Like, this ability as written could never reach play because there's no fucking abilities in this entire fucking game that push targets more than like 10 or 20 feet. There are none. Like, even high level fucking abilities push people like 20 feet. Maybe 30 as like an 18th level ability, as like a 9th level fucking spell or some shit. Like, you look at all of the cool abilities that are all like fucking monk attacks that are just like pushing strike and stuff. It's like, oh, you knock them back 10 foot or 20 on a critical success. There are no fucking abilities in this game that knock somebody 60 feet in a direction. I wish there was, because it's the coolest shit ever. But that's not something that exists in Pathfinder 2. So if this ability reaches final draft as written, it'll be one of the coolest fucking push abilities in the fucking game. And so that's why I can't imagine it'll get there. Or target 5 creatures. Moving 5 creatures that don't even have to be in a cone or anything. They just have to be within 60 feet of you to push them all 30 feet. Like, this ability is ridiculous. Like, a lot of them are going to save, although it is reflex, so maybe not so much. Your class DC is low at almost throughout the entire game compared to a caster. But yeah, that's ridiculous. I would say everybody who has access to air needs this at level 4, because it is some of the most powerful movement ability in the frickin' game. Like, spending 2 actions to move somebody 30 feet is good, because there's a chance that they only have 25 foot movement. So you're spending 2 actions to get them away from your team, and it causes them an action to get at least 1 action to get back in. And if you've got fucking fair winds on, they're fucked. It's their whole goddamn turn just getting back to where they are, because they're going to be spending at least 2 actions to get through your frickin' difficult terrain, and maybe even 3 if they only have 25 foot. And then once it upgrades to 60 foot, that's you've wasted their whole turn. This ability, 2 actions to waste 3 of theirs. Like, it's stupid good. It's just phenomenally bonkers good. I mean, even when you consider pushing gets less and less useful as you level up, because enemies start getting drastically higher speeds, especially if they have flight. And they also start getting bonkers range if they don't have that speed. Like, 60 feet is still at least a move action for even creatures that have, like, dragons that have 120 foot fucking fly speed, or most tentacle monsters that have like 60 foot fucking reach. Like, this ability is still going to cause them to waste an action, whereas almost no other push or shove or knockback ability in the entire game will affect those kind of creatures. So yeah, I cannot state how amazing this is as currently written. Anyhow, moving on. Soothing breeze. A gentle, refreshing breeze ripples through the air in a 20-foot burst with 3 effects. The breeze extinguishes small, non-magical fires, dispenses fog and smoke, and blows objects of negligible bulk around. Around. What does that mean? Does that mean it leaves the 20-foot burst, or just moves, rearranges how they are within that burst? Each living creature in the area regains 3d4 hit points and is then temporarily immune to regaining HP from Soothing Breeze for 10 minutes. That's 2 effects. It says it has 3. Those are 2 effects. Like, I think they meant to say that blowing objects around is a different effect than extinguishing fires and fog and smoke, but whatever, I guess. It's a targeted 20-foot burst heal, which is kind of interesting, but it scales like ass. Like absolute ass. Like, it... I mean, if you compare it to, like, Healing Touch and stuff, it's not terribly bad. But you can only do it once every 10 minutes. Whereas if you have Lay on Hands or similar abilities, you can at least get multiple focus points to do it multiple times every 10 minutes. But Burst Heal, it's not terrible. Not terrible at all. But, you know, you have to make sure that you target it properly and not hit enemies. But still, this is a hell of a lot better than, you know, anybody casting Heal as a 3 action. Because that spell is just terrible as a 3 action. Just, like, the only time you want to do that is if your whole party needs healing, but none of them need a lot of healing, or you have undead around. Whereas this is just useful. Clean as air. Compact layers of air diffract and bend light around your body, making it seem as clear as the sky on a perfect day. You become invisible until the end of your next turn. You can sustain the impulse, but it ends if you take a hostile action. After you use this impulse, it can't be used again for 10 minutes. When you are clear as air, you can gather air quietly and invisibly, but the invisibility doesn't hide any manifestations of your other abilities. Okay, before getting into the heightened shit, this is permanent invisibility. There is no maximum on the sustain. Normally it says sustain up to a minute. I believe there is a maximum cap on sustain as a general rule of like 10 minutes or something. I forget what it is, but this allows you to become invisible at will, but you can only do it once every 10 minutes. So as long as you stay invisible for 10 minutes, you can be invisible forever. That is bonkers, just absolutely bonkers. Like, as a stealth character, that is the most amazing shit ever. And even if you are making a stealth character and you have like 2 or 3... You have 3 feats that you can blow, like, grab Kineticist and get this, because holy shit. At will invisibility is just fucking crazy. And then, at level 10th, the impulse doesn't end if you take a hostile action, but you become concealed instead of invisible until the start of your next turn. That's still pretty freaking awesome. And then 16th level, taking a hostile action has no effect. Permanent fucking greater invisibility at level 16. Permanent greater invisibility, so long as you don't get rid of it within 10 minutes. Like, that's... Air has a lot of ridiculous stuff in it. Storm Spiral. Dark thunderclouds swirl in a miniature storm, crisscrossed with bolts of lightning. The storm appears in a 10-foot burst within 30 feet. Each creature in the area takes 3d12 electricity damage and is moved depending on its reflex save against your class DC. So 10-foot burst within 30 feet. It's a 3-action overflow. So this is terrible. The failure moves things as well, which is just, I guess, kind of interesting. Full damage and you move. Crit failure, double damage, and you can move it up to 10 feet in a direction of your choice. That's an interesting rider. Like, no idea why that's there, but it's interesting. Every 3 levels, the damage increases by 1d12. So first off, you're comparing this to, like, lightning bolt levels of damage for 3 actions. So the damage is moderately low to start with. The starting damage is decent. It's not great. It's mediocre. The scaling is horrible. That is horrible scaling for damage. Every 3 levels 1d12 instead of every 2. That's pretty bad. So at your top levels, it's going to be doing much less damage than like chain lightning and stuff. And it's a 3-action, which means you cannot do this every round. At least not until like level 19, 17 or 19 or whatever, when you get the free draw your power. So it's all right to do as like a focus spell. Like, you do this on your second turn, or maybe your first turn if your GM allows you to start combat with your element drawn. So this is a cool opening ability, but because it's 3 actions until level 20, you can't spam it, so it's not great, but it's okay. And by later levels, the damage is going to be fairly low, so it's not going to be impressive even on your first turn. I don't know. 10-foot burst, that's not even very big. It's mediocre, not a great ability. Celestial Palisade. The winds form a swirling barrier to repel anyone who would pass. This is Wall of Wind, I believe, right? Yes, Wall of Wind. Wall of Wind, except the wall is 30 feet long, and creatures that attempt to fly through it have to pass your class DC. Lasts until the end of your next turn, but you can sustain it up to a minute. It's a wall, and it gets bigger and thicker every level. That's kind of crazy. Your wall is going to be thick. Mega thick at high levels. So then it won't be a wall, it'll just be an area. You'll be just making an area of wind. That's pretty cool. 3 action kind of sucks, and you have to sustain it, which kind of sucks. That means the second turn after this, you have to spend 2 friggin' actions. 1, to draw your element again because it's an overflow, which makes you lose your element, and an action to sustain it. So your turn after casting this is pretty terrible. but that kind of goes for a lot of overflows. But specifically the ones you have to sustain, like your next turn is going to be real bad, so you better make a lot of good use out of this. And with the way that thickens as you go, I would say, yeah, you can do that. That's pretty good. Wings of air, rippling sheaves of wind emerge behind you, looking almost like wings. The wings lift you into the air, granting you a fly speed equal to your land speed or 30, whichever is greater. For 10 minutes, unlike with normal fly speed, you don't fall at the end of your turn if you didn't use a fly action, as long as you used an air impulse that turn, and you can move upward without treating it as difficult terrain. Alright, 2 actions to fly for 10 minutes. This is basically permanent fly. At level 8, permanent fly. Only, it's vastly superior to every other fly ability in the fucking game. Because A, you don't need to spend an action to maintain it, so long as you are using an impulse, which everything on this class is an impulse, so as long as you're doing something with your class, you don't have to spend an action flying to hover. And then, you don't treat moving up as difficult terrain. Nobody else gets that. That's bonkers. Air has so much good shit. Level 14, you can target up to 5 additional creatures, which gain the same fly speed but none of the other benefits. So that's good, but not great. Like, giving everyone else a fly speed is decent, but by level 14, they're coming close to having their own permanent flight. So I think by level 16, most characters should have their own permanent flight. If not from class or ancestry abilities, then by items. So not really super helpful, but, you know, if somebody's lagging behind for one reason or another, that's all right. Because it's just free. This is just a free benefit. It's like, hey, when you're using your godly, better than everybody else in the whole fucking planet flight thing, you can give somebody else some piddly lowlander flight. Some groundwalker flight. Because you're flying all the fucking time. Like, you're flying or hovering all the fucking time, except when you sleep. Ugh. Air has so much good crap. Circulate Ki. Except for it's not Ki. QI is Kwai? I do not know how to pronunciate that. Sorry. The pure air of your inner gate is rich in Kwai that you can use to invigorate and restore an ailing creature. Target an adjacent living creature. It gains 30 HP, which is not bad. Then you attempt to counteract blinded, clumsy, deafened, drained, enfeebled, paralyzed, sickened, or stupefied. Counteracting a condition with a condition value reduces the value by 1 instead of entirely removing it. The target is then immune for 1 hour. You can try to remove an instance of a condition from a given creature only once using this impulse, though you can try to remove the same condition from a different source. For instance, if you failed to remove the drain condition from a Jiangxi vampire's drain Q ability, you couldn't attempt to remove it again, but an hour later, you could still try to remove the drain condition from a poison. Alright. So, this is kind of complex. First off, you gain 30 HP that scales up by 2 per level. Which is pretty weird. That normally it would give you 24, but it gives you 30 starting with that scaling. Strange. But that's not bad scaling at all. For a heal. Although only being able to use once an hour is terrible if you just want to heal. But as just a burst heal, that's not bad at all. And then the conditions that it can remove is kind of bonkers. You would have to be a cleric or somebody with high-level medicine and then take multiple feats to be able to do all of those with one thing. So that's crazy good. But then this is a level 12 feat, whereas by level 12 you would definitely have all of those and probably had them for a while by now. Counteracting is going to be pretty terrible with this. Well, not terrible with this character, but less than efficient with this character because your class DC is going to be behind a caster. So you're going to be like 1 to 2 points behind all the time. So counteracting is going to be harder for you than a caster. And then it's also, you can only use this ability once per condition and then never again for that condition. Which is kind of strange. You get one shot. And then if somebody has multiple conditions that you want to cure, you can only attempt one per hour. So there's a lot of limitations on this, but if you're permanently blinded, deafened, or no, those are the ones that could be permanent out of those conditions. And sickened, you would just keep rolling your fort saves until you get it. But paralyzed, a one-shot in combat attempt to heal and get rid of a paralyze, that's pretty damn good. Getting rid of blinded is always fantastic. Getting rid of clumsy could definitely be very, very helpful in combat. So this is a very interesting ability, but the negatives on it keep it from being amazing. I mean, even if it was just once an hour, can keep trying the same ability over and over again, it would still be just okay. This only once ever kind of bumps it down to the decent instead of good. Maybe if they just got rid of the heal on it and then got rid of the only once and just used it as a cleanse. I don't know. It seems like it's trying to do a lot, and because they don't like abilities doing a lot, they also just tacked on this additional negative to it. It's very strange. But overall, if you can make use out of it, it's pretty damn good. But if you take this feat and then all your attacks fail, counteracting checks fail because, you're not good at it, that could feel real fucking bad. Wiles on the Wind. Speaking lies, you set them loose upon a drifting wind. You create an auditory illusion that comes from a square within 120 feet and can be as loud as 4 normal humans talking. The sound can be intricate, including speech or music, though the GM might require you to attempt a check or know a language for it to be convincing. You can make each creature within 20 feet of the illusory sound attempt a will save against your class DC. On a failure, it's fascinated with the source of the sound for 1 round, or 2 rounds on a critical failure. This is a mental effect. A creature becomes temporarily immune for 1 hour immediately if it succeeds its save, or after its fascination ends if it fails. A creature can seek the source of the sound using your class DC, and a success it disbelieves the illusion. What? Fucking what? Alright, first off, this is a fascination. Fascinations are hot fucking garbage. Absolute trash abilities. Anything that fascinates is garbage. and can only be used out of combat. Therefore, saying that it only works for 6 fucking seconds, 12 seconds on a failure, means that anything and everything that this ability is trying to do is fucking useless. The only way to use this ability would be to have your entire party stealthing, cast this, hopefully have it work to waste the other creature's turn while your entire party just delays to the end of initiative and then butt rush these creatures and beat them down. But then every turn after the first, your entire party goes last in initiative. So is that ever worth it? Anything to you? Maybe. Is it worth a fucking 12th level ability? Fuck no. Fuck no. Sorry, but every spell, every ability that has fascinated it in this game is hot garbage, because the condition of fascinated says if anything happens to them or to anyone they consider an ally, anything happens to them at all, anything that they might consider hostile, immediately breaks fascinated. So it is the fragilest fucking condition ever imagined. So hot garbage. If this lasted for a minute, if you could literally just keep people like guessing, especially since, you know, all they have to do is seek against your class DC to disbelieve it, like making this last a minute would still be good. It would just be a decent ability if it lasted a minute. Yeah. Get me away from that shit. 14th level, Body of Air. Letting your gathered air consume you disperses your body. This just does gaseous form. Gives you resistance 10. And lasts the end of your next turn. But you can sustain it. Doesn't say how long. Do you presume you can sustain it forever or to some other limitation? And the damage resist scales up, which is pretty cool. So, I mean, that's not terrible, I guess. Like, gaseous form isn't amazing, I don't believe. It's been a while since I read it, but whatever. Ferocious Cyclone. Intense winds swirl and compress in your hands, then burst out in a narrow but powerful tornado. Each creature in a 10-foot wide, 60-foot line takes 7d10 bludgeoning damage with a reflex saves against your class DC. It also pushes things if they fail, which is weird that to have these extra riders on. It's super thematic and super cool, but weird. So, a 10-foot wide line. I don't even give a shit about what the rest of this does. 10-foot wide line, sign me up. Lines suck ass. 10-foot wide, I'm pretty sure that would fix all my problems with lines. 7d10 bludgeoning damage? Probably not great, especially at 14. Probably pretty bad. Only goes up every 3 levels. Damage is pretty terrible. But you can actually hit targets with this. And it maybe has a chance of pushing them. 10 feet on a fail and 20 on a crit? Yeah. And it's only a 2 action. It's an overflow, of course, which kind of sucks for it. But, like, it's a half-decent ability. It's not great, but it's a line that you can reliably hit multiple targets with. Like, if you already have air gathered and you move, especially with your stupid fucking fly speed bullshit, and your aura, if you move like 30 or 35 feet and cannot manage to hit multiple targets with a 10-foot wide line, then you're probably doing something wrong. So, yeah, just for this, I would say it's worth it. Even if the damage probably not fantastic. Infinite Expanse of Blueist Heaven. This is a theme where every element has a wuxia, zuxia kind of 18th level ability that just has a cool, rad-ass name. But most of them are pretty bad. Sphere of distorted air creates an illusion of limitless expanse of impossibly blue sky, all within feel the overwhelming sensation of falling forever. The vision appears in a 10-foot burst, so super tiny, within 60 feet. Not a fantastic range, but not horrible. Each creature in the area must attempt a will save, which could be pretty good, against your class DC. A creature that has the air trait gets a result 1 degree better. The illusion lasts until the end of your next turn, but you can sustain it if it has no effect on creatures that weren't in the area when you used the impulse. So things walking into it don't get affected by it, which is kind of fucking ass. Any effect of the illusion ends for the creature as soon as it leaves the area or the impulse ends, and the creature then becomes temporarily immune for 10 minutes. More ass. Using Infinite Expanse of Blueist Heaven again ends any previous one you created, making literally everything in the combat immune. Probably. Success. It's Flatfooted. Are you fucking kidding me? That's all it does? It flat-foots? It's a will save, which is pretty decent. But it only flat-foots things within a 10-foot burst. You can sustain the flat-footed, but it can just move the fuck out of it. Failure. The creature's flat-footed. It's fleeing from the illusory sky, but is also disoriented. Anytime it uses an action to attempt to flee, it must succeed on a DC 11 flat check or flee to a space that's still within the illusion. Like, that's just one square, dude. It's a tiny 10-foot fucking burst. The GM determines where the creature ends up, but they can't have it stay stationary if it's still able to move. Alright. This is fucking retarded, but also kind of funny. Like, a 10-foot burst is pretty terrible. You can sustain it, which is alright, but at best, this has no critical failure. There's no critical failure effect on this, which is hot dog shit. Because at best, you have a 50% chance of this doing anything more than just flat-footing a single creature who will then move the fuck out of it and become immune to it. So you're spending 3 actions on an overflow, meaning 4 actions total, to make a single, maybe 2, highly unlikely you're ever going to get 3 or more creatures flat-footed for 50% chance 1 turn. And then they all become immune to it. You force them to move, though, so if you have a heavy attack of opportunity group, you might be able to get some use out of that. But only a 50% chance to it actually do the fucking thing you want it to do and have them just walk around in a fucking tiny circle, which would provoke attacks of opportunity and be awesome. Like, this is so close to being a really cool ability, but 50% chance on a failure to actually work feels fucking terrible, because you're rarely, if ever, going to get that failure. So most of the time, this is a 4-action flat-footed to 1 or 2 creatures. Like, holy shit. Everyone can do that, like, 10 levels earlier. Crowned in Tempest's fury. You reach out to find a devastating thunderstorm on the plane of air and make yourself one with it, placing a crown of lightning on your brow. Sparks flash in your eyes, and lightning strikes constantly in the air around you as winds howl and lift you. Any creature that enters your kinetic aura... Oh, this is an aura. That's cool. Or ends its turn there takes 2d12 electricity damage. Not a lot of damage, but it can be within 30 feet of you, so decent. If you don't have a fly speed, you gain a 20-foot fly speed. If you have the Wings of Air Impulse, you instead gain that fly speed and the extra benefits. You gain a 10-foot status bonus to all your speeds. That's pretty cool. If you use an air elemental blast, it deals an additional 1d12 electricity damage. That's just a pretty decent aura. Like, it might still be worth it to use your other aura just for the difficult terrain out to 30 feet. But this is, average of 13 damage to everything within 30 feet of you. All enemies by that point. And gives you fly speed, but you've already got permanent fly, so it literally doesn't matter that that's there. And you get a little bit more status bonus. And your air blasts do a little bit of extra damage. It's decent. I would say as an 18th level ability, it's not spectacular, but it's decent. That could probably be like a 12th level ability or something. I mean, it sort of does a lot, but most of what it does is, like, redundant. Like, a 10-foot status bonus to all your speeds. That's only 5 foot better than what you've already got, so not as good as it says it is. Fly speed is literally useless because you've already got it. There's no way you're going to miss the friggin' permanent fly ability. You're just not. So it only does this first thing and this last thing, which are both pretty decent. Like at 14th or 16th level, I would say that definitely fits right then. At 18th, a little bit high for what it's doing. Anyhow, that was a whole lot of time just for air. I will try to be quicker, but this is going to take a while. Earth, geological attunement. This gives you tremor sense, imprecise, and then at 13th level becomes precise tremor sense. Imprecise tremor sense is decent. At first level, it's pretty fucking good, I would say. But not fantastic. Like, it's like getting scent or any other kind of thing. Maybe even worse than scent, because any flying or levitating creatures get over it. But at level 13, tremor sense as a precise sense, that's bonkers. Just fucking bonkers. Again, a lot of stuff's probably going to be flying, so it's not going to be as good as it might otherwise be, but still, that's a lot of creatures that could be fucking invisible and you would not give a shit. Stepping stones. This is an interesting ability, but kind of dumb. It basically just gives you, that anime and cartoony ability to just make fucking platforms that you can jump on. It's thematic and kind of interesting. And I mean, you could very well say that it's pretend flight because you can go up. So, and it's not overload, so you can just spend 2 actions every turn. And you just keep going. Yeah, it's... I mean, I think it's saying that it has to be attached to stuff. So basically, it gives you climb speed or gets you over difficult terrain. Like, it's not great. It's cool, but not really all that powerful. Stone Shield. This is a fantastic ability that is problematic. You raise a shield, and then you can block with it. The shield gives you a normal +2 circumstance bonus to AC, but it also gives you a +2 fortitude save, which is awesome. You can block. Your shield has a hardness of 6 that scales up by 3 every 2 levels. That is better than the best shields in the game. So, saying, hey, I can shield block for one action and get a +2 to both AC and fortitude, and then I can block better than any shield can block. That sounds ridiculously awesome. But wait, how does that work? Well, when you shield block, if anything meets or exceeds that hardness, the shield breaks. Then you are no longer raising the shield, so you lose those bonuses. And the block also makes it so that you lose your gathered element. So then, if you use your reaction to shield block, you then have to use an action next turn to get your element back, which is rough. So there's a lot of problems with this, and you really have to use it strategically. But if you can manage that, if you can tiptoe around those potholes, it's a pretty fucking amazing ability. Tremor. You strike the earth. 5-foot burst within 30 feet. Each creature in the area takes 2d4 bludgeoning damage. Fortitude save. Any creature that critically sails is knocked prone, and the ground is difficult terrain. Damage goes up by 1d4 every 2 levels. Scales like a cantrip, which is bad. Cantrips do garbage damage. After like level 8, you should never be using a cantrip. You should find something else to do damage because cantrip is bad. Like, martial characters easily like do double or triple cantrip damage. So you want to be doing more than that. The fact that most of these can possibly hit multiple targets sort of makes that okay, but you want to do better. I don't know, I think Tremor is half decent. The area is minuscule. The range is not great. And the damage is mediocre. Anyway, 4th level, Dust Storm. Make a swirling storm. And any creature inside it is concealed to creatures outside it, and vice versa. Which is horrible. And you can move any creature inside the aura 5 feet towards you. Or 5 foot sideways. But they cannot get further away from you. And if they don't want to get closer to you, they can do a fortitude save to resist it. This is your aura, so you can eventually make it 30 feet from you, which is crazy good. But until 8th level, when you get that ability to make it larger and also choose to have targets not affected by it, and I suppose it would depend on how your GM determines not affected by it. But the fact that this works like so many other spells that do the same thing, right? Like fog. There's a fog spell that does it and similar kind of stuff. All the spells that are like, oh, it makes concealment. If you're inside it, nobody outside it can see you. But you can't see them either. It's like, well, there's only one time you would ever want to do that, is when you're trying to get away from something. When you're trying to hide from something. The fact that you can't move it, usually, or use it aggressively makes it far less useful than it otherwise would be. Because This is a game of being aggressive. You need to attack stuff and kill them. That's generally how the game works. So not being able to see your enemy is very unhelpful most of the time. The fact that this can move with you makes it better than a lot of the other abilities. So you can easily just have concealment on you all the time, but you also basically blind yourself beyond your aura because you can't see stuff. So, I don't know. If your GM allows you to get the benefits of this at 8th level when you take the feat for it, get the benefits of this without getting the negatives, I would say this is a decent ability at 8th level and above. Otherwise, it's not fantastic. It's basically good for running away and not much else. Or maybe, running through an area where you don't want to engage in combat. But it's not good for an in-combat ability. Restoring Mud. It's lay on hands, basically, that you can throw at people. Gives temporary hit points and does a heal. It's decent. The problem being that, you can only hit them with it once every 10 minutes. But it's a free mud in your face lay on hands. That's pretty good. Ignogenesis. You can create a permanent stone object. And all this is just saying all the limitations and all this. This is a super weird ability. I'm not going to get into all this stuff because it's way too much to deal with. Like, if you have a permissive GM, you could probably get some use to this, but otherwise, no. It's like you can't even shape it properly. You have to make a crafting skill just to make it look like something, or like draw on it. So many restrictions. Roll a boulder. Roll a stone out to 30 feet. Hitting each creature in order until it reaches the end of the line, or it strikes a solid surface, like a wall or door or tree. Each creature in the area takes 2d8 bludgeoning damage with a reflex save against your class DC. Goes up 1d8 every 3 levels, so this is bad damage, and it goes up like shit. I mean, it's slightly better than 1d4 every 2 levels, but not a lot. And it knocks things prone only if they can't get out of the way, because when it hits something, it moves them out of the way, which is weird. And of course, because it's a boulder, it's only traveling across the ground and is therefore maybe, depending on your GM, subject to a bunch of other stuff like inclines, or if you're flying, or just like water or other stuff. It's complicated. So it's not fantastic and could actually be bad depending upon how your GM looks at it. But, it's your first, not even decently ranged. Like, your other ability has the same range. But there's a small chance that this might hit other things because it's a line instead of a 5-foot burst. Neither one of them are fantastic, though. Spike Skin. You touch a willing creature and give it stone skin, which is fucking awesome. At will stone skin. Except for it's got problems. It's also got an extra bonus. Whenever the target is hit by an adjacent creature with a melee attack, the attacking creature takes 2 piercing damage. Both the damage resistance and the piercing return damage scale up by 2 every 2 levels. So basically, you get an additional your level to damage resist and your level to damage back at the enemy. At least from 8th level on. So you gotta do a tiny bit of math for that. The problem is, the impulse lasts for 10 minutes, just like Stone Skin, and each time the target is hit, the duration decreases by a minute, just like Stone Skin. The problem is the target is temporarily immune to this impulse for an hour. So it's not like permanent Stone Skin, because you only do it once an hour. that could be problematic for you, because this easily invites analysis paralysis. But if you use it every fight you can, then that's probably the best way to do it. Just say, fuck it, just use it as often as you can, and it's cool damage resist and damage return. Earth kind of lends itself towards being a tanky sort of character. Sort of. I mean, once you consider that kineticists aren't tanky. Swim through Earth. You get a burrow speed. Except for you don't actually make a hole in the earth. You just literally move through the ground. Which is awesome. And you sustain it up to a minute. If you're inside, when it ends, you immediately return to the surface directly above you. And then you're prone and slowed until the end of your next turn. 14th level, you can move through stone and lava, though you still take damage to lava unless something else protects you against it. So probably don't do that. But this is awesome. Burrow speed, and you don't actually make a hole where things could easily follow you. That's just fantastic. Just fantastic. Hurtling Rockfall. Create a ball of stone between your hands and lob it at your foes. Where it lands, it unleashes a blast of razor-sharp shrapnel. This is a frag grenade. Deals 3d8 bludgeoning damage to all creatures within a 5-foot square within 60 feet, and the shrapnel slices everything within a 10-foot emanation around it for 2d6 slashing damage. Each creature in either area attempts a basic reflex save against your class DC. The damage goes up in a sort of odd way. I don't think any of this damage is good. It's cool that you get like a frag grenade ability, but the damage isn't fantastic at all. So, I don't know. But you can use it every turn. So if you've got enemies that are stuck in a tight little corridor, yeah, spam this every round. Probably get some decent use out of it. Rock Rampart. Draining on concentration of Earth, you can cast Wall of Stone. There's zero chance that this makes it to print the way it is, because all the other wall spells are 3-action sustains, whereas this is a 2-action sustain that is also not overflow. I'm fairly sure all the other walls are overflow, so expect this to be a 3-action overflow at release. But even still, it's Wall of Stone, the best wall in the game. But the maximum length is 60 feet instead of 120, but it gets longer every 2 levels. And the hit points increase every 2 levels. This is stupid awesome. Freaking bonkers good. Even if your GM is one of the ones that don't let you make this into a cage of stone and just says, it has to be a single plane, it can't swap from flat to standing up. It's still stupid good. Even after it gets in line with all the other walls, it'll still be stupid good. Because Wall of Stone, whenever the hell you want it, is... oh my god. I can't even imagine how great that would be. Assume Earth's Mantle. 3-action overflow. Gather Earth splits into plates of stone surrounding you in a rocky armor that grants you a number of powerful defensive abilities. The armor lasts 1 minute. You can dismiss the armor, but you can't create a new one until the full minute is up. So don't ever dismiss it, because that's just a bad idea. You become large, which is cool. You gain a climb speed equal to your land speed, but you can only use it to climb surfaces of earth, stone, brick, and similar, which is cool. Level 14, not fantastic, but, you know, it's a ribbon ability. That's cool. The armor has a +5 item bonus to AC, a dexterity cap of 1, a check penalty of -2, a speed penalty of 5, and you don't gain any bonuses of your armor you're wearing. So this basically drops your AC by 1 point. If you've got the dexterity and such to have normal max AC, this will drop your AC by 1. Which is kind of confusing why that would happen, since this is supposed to be like a defensive ability. The armor grants you a +2 item bonus to fortitude saves, and a +2 circumstance bonus to fortitude and reflex saves against attempts to shove, trip, or knock you. And this is an item bonus to fortitude, which will stack with your stone shield that gives you a circumstance bonus to fortitude. So, and this class gets legendary fortitude, so, you know, Earth is gods of fortitude saves, which is kind of cool. And then we get into the thing that is blow your mind powerful. If your strength is below 18, this armor raises your strength to 18. Cool. But if your strength is 18 or higher, this armor grants you a +2 item bonus to your strength score. This gives you a goddamn apex bonus to strength at level 14. That's a level 17 bonus at level 14 to your strength, and then you can get an apex item bonus to another fucking stat. Nobody else can do anything like this. Nobody. The Summoner is the only other class that even gets something vaguely similar to this. Holy shit, is that powerful. I hope this makes it to final as written or not change too much. Like, I hope the AC bonus gets buffed up some, but even losing AC to get this for a strength-based character, this is stupid good. So unbelievably stupid good. And the AC bonus increases and the fort increases so that the AC stays -1 to you when you're getting better armor. Like, at level 14, it's overflow and 3 action, but it lasts a minute. So sit down and have a conversation with your GM and say, hey, GM, we're wandering around right now. I'm going to spend 6 seconds of every minute casting Assume Earth's Mantle. So I always have this up. All the time. And then you will have to decide, okay, well, do you want to just assume it's up for every combat the whole time? Or do you want to maybe go, hey, a minute is 10 rounds. So every combat, go ahead and roll me a d10, and we'll say that's how many rounds you have left until you have to re-up this. Like, either way, this is a win-win-win situation for a strength-based character because it is so friggin' good, and you can keep it up most of the time. It's just when it goes down, you're gonna lose a whole turn and then an extra action on your next turn as well, which sucks, but for this bonus, it's probably worth it most of the time. Probably. Stone Guardian, you summon an elemental. And it has stats. Like, minions suck, so this sort of sucks. Like, it goes up per level, so it's probably better than most summons, but it's still a summon. Being better than most still won't make it great. But I don't think it's bad. Rebirth and Living Stone. Here's another complication. Because it's polymorph. Rock overflows from within you to consume your body. You basically turn yourself into living rock. Transform into living stone. You gain 40 temporary hit points, which at level 18 is decent. It might defend 1 hit on you, maybe. You're immune to critical hits and precision damage. Fucking what? Fucking what? Holy shit. You can't be pushed, pulled, or tripped while you're standing on earth or stone. Holy shit. The damage die of your Earth Elemental Blast is D10 instead of D8. Well, that's good. That's cool. That's extra damage. While under this effect, you can gather Element to gather Earth as a free action at the start of each of your turns, which you got as a haste action at level 17. This benefit lasts until the end of your next turn, but you can sustain it for up to a minute. And at 20th level, you gain 50 bonus health, and your damage scales to a D12. That is two-hander damage with your blasts. So, alright. Let's break this shit down. It's a polymorph, which says that you can't do other spells and effects and such when you're polymorphed. But none of these are spells. So I would say, and this you have to sustain this, which sort of sucks. But this class has at level 16 the free sustain feat. So pick that up, and then you sit down and you have your conversation with your GM again, and you're like, Mr. GM, I'm going to spend 12 seconds of every minute, 1, casting Rebirth in Living Stone and sustaining it with my free sustain, and also casting Assume Earth's Mantle. So you go into every combat with both of these up. And then you might, have to roll a die to see when they fall, and that will ruin, 2 turns of yours when they go down, or you'll just fight without them because spending more turns re-upping them in the middle of combat probably isn't beneficial. But if you walk into, especially if you're rolling a D10, because most combats last 4, maybe 5 rounds. So half the time, you're going to get through a combat without these going down. And most of the time, you're still going to be good through most of a combat before it goes down. Very rarely, only a 10% chance will it go down in the first round, only a 10% chance it'll go down in the second round. So you only have a 30% chance that these will fall during the important parts of combat. So I would definitely say yes. Go into combat with both of these up, and you're just fucking phenomenally good. And if you have a second element, if you are dual element or universal, I would say walk into combat, have whatever element. Well, you're going to have Earth up just because you're saying, oh, well, I'm re-upping this stuff all the time, so I've got Earth up. And then you can do your change. If you're dual element, you can do your change blast. And then your next turn, you can easily make a turn where you overflow and then swap elements with your free stone upping, and then do something else, and then at the beginning of your turn, you get a free choice of whatever element you want. And then during your turn, you can always freely swap it back to Earth. There might not be a whole lot you can do with that, but the versatility of just being able to start every turn with whatever element you want and end your turn in Earth, that's got to be great. That just is... You've got to be able to make something out of it. The Shattered Mountain Weeps. A massive sphere of rock appears overhead, exploding in a cataclysm of falling debris and deadly shrapnel. 20-foot burst within 120 feet. That's decent. Not great, but it's decent. Creatures in the area take 9d10 bludgeoning damage with a basic fortitude save against your class DC. Those who fail saved are knocked prone. For the next minute, rock continues to fall in the area, making it difficult terrain and dealing 2d10 bludgeoning damage to any creature that ends its turn in the area. If you use this ability again, previous blah, 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 blah. This is good. It's just a good ability. It's not fantastic. It's not awesome or anything, but if you like cast Wall of Stone and then cast this into the center of your stone, like, and have people in your group have knockdowns and pushes and stuff, and you could get a lot of use out of that. Now we're going to fire. Burning Jet. This basically sort of gives you fly at first level. You can stride up to 40 feet in a straight line, and it doesn't trigger reactions. That's pretty good. At level 6, you can move 60 feet. You can choose not to stride and instead leap. And at 10th level, you can hover after leaping. And if you leap, you don't fall at the end of your next turn. If you use Burning Jet again on a subsequent turn, you remain airborne. So it sort of becomes like hovery sort of fly. So it's pretty good and doesn't provoke, which is great. But you always have to use 2 actions, which is sort of unfortunate. Eternal Torch. This is fucking... It just does... Eternal... what the hell's the name of that spell? Ever-Burning Torch. It's basically that. You can keep making more of them. And eventually they get to 60-foot radius, so they get bigger eventually. Like, it's cool. And it says target creature or object. No save. So, does that mean you can literally touch an enemy creature and then always basically know roughly where it is by how much light is being shed? I don't know. Maybe. I would say try it. But otherwise, like, just choose something that has dark vision, man. I don't know. I almost always try to have dark vision, so... Flame Eruption. With a full upward gesture, you shape a vertical column of spiraling flames. 5 feet in diameter. That sucks ass. And 30 feet high, which is fucking useless. Who cares? That's just for the look. Like, you're never going to draw a line from the ground into the sky and hit multiple targets. Like, if that ever happens, I would say your GM did something stupid, or the creatures you're fighting are fucking idiots, because that shouldn't happen. Each creature in the area takes 1d6 fire damage with basic reflex. The flame remains briefly, making all squares in the column hazardous terrain until the start of your next turn. Creature takes 1 fire damage each time it moves into one of these squares. There's only 1 square, unless it's falling directly down through the column, which, hey, if you manage to do that, if you managed to get something to take 30 fire damage from falling through this column, I would say you are an amazing person. You are a fantastic strategist, and your group should be able to kill everything and anything that comes across, because, wow, that's pretty amazing. Because, like, if you target a flying creature with this, and then somehow manage to knock that creature down, like trip it, or do one of the fighter or barbarian, I think both have things that knock things down. Maybe ranger does too. Like, that would be awesome. But it's still a maximum of 30 damage. Like, it's good up until like level 8 to 10-ish, and then it's just like, well, 30 damage is less than a martial hit, so not fantastic at that point. Initial damage increases by 1d6, and the hazardous terrain damage increases by 1 every 3 levels. Alright. So, super difficult ability to use, and it's never going to be good to do on your own. But if you can target flying creatures and then have somebody else in your group manage to knock them out of the air without them, taking their reaction to right themselves and stuff. If you can get that to work, this is a cool ability. Otherwise, no. Warming Nimbus. Waves of pleasant warmth flow from you, countering the cold. This is an aura, which is cool, so it can be giant. Choose cold or fire. You and all creatures in your kinetic aura gain resistance equal to your level to damage of that type. So you've already got that for fire, but then you can give it to everybody else. Or get cold resist equal to your level. If you have the elemental resistance class feature, your resistance from Warming Nimbus is cumulative with any resistance of the same type of damage you gain from that class feature. Oh, so you can get twice your fucking level to fire resistance. Wow. Why would you ever not want that up all the fucking time? That's just amazing. Weird that fire has a purely defensive aura while water has the offensive one. Just saying. Blazing Wave. Flames flow out of you in a cascade, consuming everyone in a 30-foot cone. That's a pretty big cone for this level. Each creature in the area takes 3d6 fire damage. That's half a fireball. With a basic reflex save against your class DC, that creature critically fails to knock prone. That's an awesome rider. 1d6 extra damage every other level. So it does half the damage as fireball. As a cone. Like, okay, that's decent. I wouldn't ever say that's good, but it's decent. I mean, when you compare to all the breath weapons you can pick up that scale worse than that are also 2 actions, they don't have overflow though. So this is really a 3-action ability. It's good. It's not great, not fantastic. And by later levels, it's going to dip down into meh territory. But it's alright, especially at lower levels. That means level 4, you're doing half fireball damage at level 4. Level 5, your casters will start putting you to shame because they'll be actually doing fireballs 500 feet away from the enemy and all that good stuff. Desert Shimmer! Heat grows intense around you and the air wavers and ripples. You and all creatures in your kinetic aura are concealed by intense shimmers of heat. Any creature other than you that starts its turn in the aura takes 2 fire damage. You ignore concealment caused by heat shimmers. So this is just a better version of the air one. Because once you get the ability to not do damage to your allies, this is just cool. 30 feet around you, all your enemies take 2 fire damage, increased by 1 every 3 levels. So they're just taking constant damage, and you're concealed. That's just fantastic. Depending upon how your GM rules making yourself immune to its abilities. Like, would you still be concealed if you are immune to the effects of this kinetic aura? I would say yes. Unless something's like standing right next to you. Because it's still an aura. They're still concealing stuff around you. Crawling Fire. This is a really weird ability. You make a living fire within 30 feet that acts as an extension. So you can cast abilities from it. It's interesting. It's basically like reach. This basically gives you reach. Except for you can move it around. It can be attacked using your defenses. It's interesting, but rather strange. And it's a 3-action fucking ability. Thankfully, it's not overflow, but it's still taking your whole turn to set this up. May or may not be worth it. And it can be larger and larger and larger. But I don't think it... Yeah, you take damage instead of it. So it's also a vulnerability point for you. It's kind of weird. I don't know why you would want to have it huge. Unless you can... Yeah. Auras are impulses, right? Yeah. So you could put that wave 30 feet from you and then make the aura. That's pretty cool. Anyway, I would say that's a difficult ability to use, but pretty cool. Wandering Smoke. You shift a creature's corporeal form into a tumbling plume of smoke. You target yourself or a willing creature you touch. The target turns into thick black smoke and strides up to its speed. During the movement, the target can move through occupied spaces and ignores any difficult terrain and greater difficult terrain that wouldn't impede smoke. Its movement doesn't trigger reactions, and at the end of the movement, the target returns to normal, and its space is filled with smoke that makes anyone within that space concealed. Smoke lasts until the start of your next turn, or until dispersed by strong wind. For 1 minute afterwards, the target's eyes glow with orange light, and the target gains smoke vision. The target can fly instead of stride after level 10. This is a really cool ability, but wow. I can't imagine it being useful in a lot of situations. But it is cool. Kindle inner flames. As a candle can light another, you awaken the latent potential to channel fire in other creatures. Target any number of willing creatures within 30 feet. Any number. That's a good start. Each of them sheds faint, flying embers for 1 minute, gaining a +1 status to reflex saves and acrobatics checks, and a +10 status bonus rolls to all its speeds. The next strike each target makes before the end of its turn deals an additional 1d6 fire damage. Well, that's bonkers. For 2 actions, no overload, you give all allies around you within 30 feet +10 speed, going up to 20 at 12th level, bonus to reflex and acrobatics checks. So you basically just say, oh, I've got this up all the time. Everybody has this all the time. Because there's no reason why you wouldn't use this every minute, all the time, even while adventuring. Solar detonation. Blinding flames explode in a swirling sphere. The detonation fills a 20-foot burst within 60 feet. That's decent. Each creature in the area takes 3d10 fire damage and can become dazzled or blinded depending on its reflex stage. Each of those creatures is then temporarily immune to being dazzled or blinded by solar detonation for 10 minutes, but can still take damage from the impulse. First off, that damage is not fantastic. 3d10, I mean, it's better than the 3d6 that the Flaming Hands one is doing, but not a whole lot better than The dazzled and blinded, immune for 10 minutes. This means you only get one shot at doing status. It's also incapacitation, so you can't actually hit any bosses with this. So it's basically just damage, which is not good. And it only goes up by 1d10 every 4 levels. That's garbage. So this will be a decent ability when you get it, and sort of decent to use on big groups of weaker enemies. But I don't know, for 3 actions plus overflow and incapacitation, your mileage may vary. Architect of Flame. Flames rise in shape at your will. This is more 3 action shit. Fire sucks with all these 3 action overflows. But this is the wall spell, so most walls are 3 action overflows that can be sustained. The thing that's interesting with this is the damage goes up. Well, actually, no, it doesn't scale, it just goes up. I think Rate of Flame Fire wall does that too. It's alright. Like, it doesn't scale every level like the other walls, so that kind of sucks. But it's alright. It's a wall of fire. Furnace Form! It's a polymorph. Opening your inner gate, you allow the flames to consume your form and leave you a living flame. You gain the benefits of fiery body. Your fire elemental blasts add a die of their normal damage die instead of the 1d4 your unarmed attacks get. While under this effect, you can gather element to gather fire as a free action at the start of each of your turns. When you get this, it kind of sucks. It's only until the end of your next turn, but after 16th level, it's pretty decent. Yeah, just decent. Arrive in Conflagration. You fall through your own inner gate. You fucking implode. That's gotta look crazy. This is Dimension Door, right? Yep, it's Dimension Door. That's all it is. In the space you left stands a pillar of fire in the shape of your body. Any creature that starts its turn adjacent to the pillar or moves into it takes 2d6 fire damage with a basic reflex save. Which scales up. Not much damage. Not anything to be concerned about, really. But at will Dimension Door out to 120 feet. Fucking what? That's great. That's just great. That's it. That's just great. The fire damage is just cherry on top. Horrid Ignition. You lob noxious chemical flames that cling to your foe, immolating them in painful flames. Make a ranged fire elemental blast. The blast deals an additional 3d6 persistent fire damage, and the target is enfeebled 1 as long as it has this persistent damage. That's good. Yeah, that's decent. A little bit of extra damage and enfeebled 1 as long as you hit. And they can't get rid of it as long as the persistent damage is on. Yeah, it's just good. All shall end in flames. White hot fire consumes everything in a cataclysmic sphere of death. The fire fills your choice of 30-foot burst within 500 feet or a 30-foot emanation. So, fireball. That's cool. Or just target yourself with it. This deals 7d10 fire damage with a basic reflex save against your class DC. Any creature dropped to 0 HP dies and reduced to ash. If you die to this impulse, you return to life at the start of your next turn in the same space. When you return, you have HP equals to double your level. So the damage is mediocre. 8d10 at 20th level, it's mediocre damage. For a 3-action overflow, pretty terrible damage. But it's got good range. And by the time you can get it, you can do it every turn. And the Phoenix ability on it is super cool, but since the damage isn't great and you have resistance, if not outright immunity to that damage type by this level, you literally can't die from this. And even if you can turn your resistance or immunity off and take full damage to it, like 7d10 damage, it's like 35 average damage. You got to be really low on health to try and kill yourself with this. I mean, you got to be like 10, 20 HP to try and kill yourself with this, because if you're at 35 or above health and this only you roll low and only do like 30 damage to yourself, then you've kind of fucked yourself. Yeah. So cool, but is somewhere between literally doesn't work and is incredibly hard to get to work. But when you do, I'm sure that it's the coolest shit imaginable. But even if you come back with 40 health, that's still, like, a lot of monsters could still one-shot you. So, you know. Being gone for a whole turn is great, though. Just being gone? Yeah, that's fucking amazing. Being gone for a whole turn? The fire... Ignite the sun. The fires are created... 5-foot burst within 500 feet. 5-foot burst? Are you fucking kidding me? Sheds light in a 500-foot radius. And dim light from the 5. Each creature in the area. What, within the 5-foot burst or within the 500-foot radius? 46 fire damage? I should fucking hope that's within 500 feet, because that's pathetic damage. That's not worth even mentioning. The sun continually channels fire into you and your allies. You and each of your allies within 20 feet of the sun, dealing an extra 1d6 fire damage with all your strikes, spells that deal fire damage, and impulses that deal fire damage. The sun lasts until the end of your next turn, but you can sustain it up to a minute. The first time you sustain the impulse each round, you can choose to increase the size of the burst by 5 feet, and you can make the sun fly up to 30 feet. So... Alright. So... This is rolling fire that sheds massive light and buffs your allies and grows bigger every time you sustain it. Like, that's weird, but pretty cool, but not really powerful at all. Like 1d6 extra fire damage, that's pretty weak for something that's going to take your whole fucking turn to cast. Unless you're level 20 and have the reduction. Which, as a fire user, you want that reduction because you have way too many 3-action fire stuff. I don't know. I don't think that's all that powerful. Water! Start with Deflecting Wave. You get resistance... equal to, what, your level plus 2? No, equal to your level. If it's bludgeoning or slashing, or double your level if it's acid or fire. And it only triggers from those 4 things. That's a cool ability. Like, it's not fantastic, but it's cool. If you don't have any other reactions, it's definitely a good reaction. Tidal Hands. You can make 2 15-foot cones or slap them together to make a 30-foot cone. Does 2d6 bludgeoning damage. Reflex save. and pushes back 5. And scales up. It's starts as a third of a fireball and scales half of a fireball. So it's decent. Not great, but decent. Water Dance. You can move a willing creature 30 feet. So they can strive 30 feet or swim 40 feet. And they get a +2 circumstance bonus to defenses against reactions triggered from it. They could just be immune. That would be awesome, but whatever. If you target yourself, you can move twice instead of once, because you're spending 2 actions on this. And then the distance of the stride or swim increases by 5 feet every 3 levels. So this starts off pretty terrible. Like, if you use it on yourself, it's mediocre. But then, you know, after a while, the distance that you're giving people is pretty friggin' good. But it's still 2 actions on your turn. So I don't know. There's probably a party build you could make to have really good use of this. But otherwise... This doesn't even say in a line, though. It just says stride 30 feet. So, yeah, you could make zigzags and stuff. So, yeah, a cool ability. Good luck getting the most out of it, because otherwise, you're kind of wasting your time. But if you can maximize it, I'm sure your party is kicking ass. Winter's Clutch. It's a kinetic aura that does 1 damage per level. So enemies just take your damage, your level as damage every round, which is fucking awesome. And at the end of your turn, choose 3 contiguous squares within the aura that fill with snow. They are difficult terrain until the start of your next turn. Not super useful, but if you're in tight corridors, you could make good use out of it. It's just a cool ability. Return to the Sea. Oh. Target willing creature for 10 minutes or until next use of Return to the Sea. It gains the effects of feet to fins and can breathe underwater. And ignores the normal water stuff. Like, this is super thematic, but a pretty terrible ability overall. It's one of those things where you're either going to have a good use for it, or you're never going to use it. So this is there for those water campaigns. Nobody else will ever take it. Veil of Mists. This gives you illusory disguise, but it lasts for 10 minutes. You then become immune for 10 minutes. Like, this is good for those, political campaigns and stealth campaigns, espionage, and all that stuff. Otherwise, nobody's going to use this. Cool. Thematic, but not super useful. More useful than Return to the Sea, but not by a lot. Slippery Slate. 20-foot burst within 120 feet. That's decent, especially for level 6. Each creature takes 4d4 cold damage. Basic reflex save. Goes up by 1d4 every 2 levels. So that's low-ish damage. Fairly low-ish. Yeah, because it's not even 6d6 when you get it at level 6. Well, I guess it could be 3. It could be that bad. Then make ice within that area, which is difficult terrain and uneven ground with a balanced DC of 15. Which means uneven ground also makes things flat-footed. So it's an alright ability. It's got low damage and some useful riders. 3 action overflow makes this not great, though. Standing surf. Water rushes up into a vertical sheet that stands suspended before you. It's wall of water. Low level for a wall, because wall of water is... I don't even think it's that terrible, actually. And the length and height increase by 5 feet every 2 levels, which is amazing. Because, let's see, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 5, so 10. So at level 16, this will be wide enough that it's going to require almost someone's entire turn to get to you. Because they're going to have to walk to, no matter where they are, they have to walk to the water and then stop. And then they have to swim through the water, which, if they don't have a swim speed, good fucking luck. That's going to be like 2 or 3 turns just getting through it. And if they do have a swim speed, they then have to swim that whole way to you. And then their third action, they might maybe be able to do something to you. So, these walls are really good. Well, it's just length and height, not thickness. It's not as good as Wall of Air. It gets higher. I mean, I guess that can affect flying stuff. So, nope, not great. But, I mean, Wall of Water is just good anyway. Because stuff have to walk up to it, stop, swim through it, stop, and then do something. So, being able to put this down, well, it's a 3 action, so you still can't even get a lot of great use out of it. But it's alright. It's a decent wall, and being able to do it at will is good. Lowland Fog, another fucking 3 action. 3 actions are bad, okay? Especially overflows. Impenetrable Fog. You create a fog bank in a 10-foot burst within 120 feet. All creatures in the fog are hidden, and all creatures outside the fog become hidden to creatures within it. Then one creature of your choice in the area can step or stride, provided it ends this movement inside the fog. The fog lasts until the start of your next turn. Fog creature attempts to target a creature within the fog. All observers disbelieve the illusion after the effect is resolved. Why are so many of these abilities illusions instead of just creating the thing it said it's making? All creatures get to move within it at level 14. So, it basically makes you blind. Makes it so that nobody can see you inside the fog. And then if anybody actually attacks anybody else inside the fog, everybody disbelieves the fog. So, it doesn't say how long this lasts. So if it's just permanent, that's fairly decent, I guess. But otherwise, probably not going to have a lot of use for that. Unless you make one, move, make another one, move, make another. Last until the start of your next turn. All right, there we go. Garbage. Hot garbage. I mean, it might be a decent defensive thing if people are raining arrows on you or blasting you from a distance or whatever. But not fantastic. Torrent in the Blood. A healing wave splashes across creatures in a 30-foot cone. Its cleansing water chases afflictions from the body. Each creature in the area gains 3d6 HP and can attempt a new save against one poison or disease afflicting them. But it doesn't get worse if they fail. It's decent. It's one of those healing things, only it's a cone. So it's pretty damn good. Drowning Sphere. This is Orb of Water. Aqueous Orb. except for it's the same thing. It's a low, second level spell that you get at level 12. The interesting thing with this is that it grows tentacles, so you can do one of your melee attacks with water from it or against anything with inside it. So that's decent-ish. Glacial Prison. You put something on ice and then can't damage it until you break the ice. Like, the only way this is ever even worth anything. I mean, it basically loses the enemy their turn, but it's a 2-action thing with incapacitation. So it's got a lot of downsides. And only if they crit fail do you get something good. Because then they get slowed 1 till the end of its next turn. So 2 turns of slowed 1. Actually, no, just 1 because, yeah. Not worth it. Yeah, because it can't be used on bosses, so not worth it. Barrier of Boreal Frost is a wall of ice. You get 2 walls. How awesome is that? Put up wall of ice, and then put a fucking wall of water in front of it. And then just be like, ha! Good luck getting to me, assholes! Because, you know, breaking a wall of ice while you're in a wall of water is going to be difficult. Sea Glass Guardian. This is exactly like Winter's Clutch, except for it only triggers when somebody in the aura gets damaged. But the damage is more than half. So, if you plan on having your allies get hit more than once per round by the same creature, this does more damage than Winter's Clutch. So, if you're fighting a bunch of weak creatures, use Winter's Clutch. If you're fighting at level or higher creatures, use this, and you will do more damage. And that's just awesome. It's very offensive auras. I love it. Ride the Tsunami. Each creature in a 60-foot cone takes 8d10 bludgeoning damage with a basic reflex save against your class DC. A creature that fails its save is pushed 10 feet or 20. See, look at that. Tiny little pushes. Any unattended object of 1 bulk or less in the area is pushed to the far edge of the cone. That's weird. Like, it's sad that it has to say that because you should just do that anyway. After the tsunami crashes down, you can swim in a straight line to any point in its area. Like, that's decent. It's, as a 3-action overflow, it's not great, but it's alright. Free move. It's okay. Not a great ability, but it's okay. Usurp the Lunar Rains. You can fully create water and control the tides, subverting even the moon's sovereignty. In a 20-foot burst within 120 feet, you manipulate or create water in your choice of following ways. Raise or lower the water level by 10 feet. Like, what? You can do that literally with your fucking just normal adaptation ability. Not 20 feet, but you can still do that. Create a pool of clean water, or make water in the area turbulent or calm to make it difficult terrain. Fucking what? This is trash. Like, most of the level 18 super sounding abilities are fairly weak. This one is hot garbage. Holy shit, is that bad? Like, how is, like, 20 foot of difficult water terrain vaguely useful? There's, like, level 10 abilities that do that shit, man. Garbage. And that is all. So, there's a lot of give and take with the abilities. Their damage is all fairly low. Action economy is a bitch with this class, but it does offer some really cool and definitely super thematic abilities. So go out, make some cool kineticists, and make some good parties. I think that's one of the key things to note with the kineticist is that it does not fit into a party. A party needs to be built around its abilities. So keep that in mind when you want to join a party, that most kineticists probably won't fit into most parties. You won't be a big boon to them unless they can really capitalize on what you can do. So that's it for now. See you in the next one.